In this lesson, you will learn how different kinds of sources can carry information from earlier times into the present. You will practice noticing what form a source takes, who it may have been made for, and how its wording or appearance can change as it is preserved or passed on. Imagine a table holding a handwritten page, words carved on stone, an official-looking sheet, a remembered story being told, and an old picture. They all seem to speak about the past, but they do not speak in the same way. Scan the 7 cards and notice that they do not all carry information in the same way. A manuscript is a text written by hand. An inscription places writing on a durable surface. Official records, religious and literary texts, and travelers' accounts are other written forms. An oral tradition passes information through speaking, listening, and remembering, while a visual source communicates mainly through images. Distinguishing the source type helps us understand what kind of material we are examining. The 7 cards give us a source form map. Historical sources can take different forms. Writing, spoken memory, and images all carry information in different ways. Source classification is useful because form affects how information is stored and encountered. Handwriting can be copied onto another page. Carved words remain attached to a surface. Spoken traditions depend on people remembering and passing them on, and images communicate visually. None of these forms is automatically best simply because it is written, spoken, or visual. The first step is to identify what kind of source it is and what kind of information that form can carry. The category tells us how the information reaches us. Source form affects how information is carried. A useful first step is to identify the form before judging what the source can tell us. Use all 7 source cards. How can you distinguish a manuscript, inscription, official record, religious or literary text, traveler's account, oral tradition, and visual source? Each card has a different way of carrying information. A manuscript is handwritten. An inscription is writing on a durable surface. Official records are administrative documents. Religious and literary texts are written works. Travelers, accounts record journeys. Oral traditions are passed through speaking and remembering, and visual sources communicate mainly through images. The form of each source is the key distinction. Next, we will compare an inscription with an oral tradition more closely. Look at how the information is carried in each panel. The inscription fixes words on a durable surface, while the oral tradition moves through people as one person speaks and others listen and remember. Both can carry information from earlier times, but they do so through different forms. The key distinction is fixed written surface versus spoken transmission. The shared question keeps the comparison fair. Inscription fixes words, oral tradition passes speech. The 2 forms carry information in different ways. The inscription remains attached to its surface, while the oral tradition depends on people continuing to remember and retell it. That does not make spoken tradition worthless, and it does not make carved writing automatically correct. Instead, the form tells us what kind of transmission we are dealing with. The comparison also corrects a common mistake. Oral tradition can have historical value. Spoken transmission is a different source form, not an empty one. Use the shared criterion beneath the 2 panels. What is the main difference between an inscription and an oral tradition? The left and right panels carry information differently. An inscription carries written information on a durable surface, while an oral tradition passes information through speaking, listening, and remembering. The difference is the form of transmission. Next, we will ask who created a source, for what purpose, and for which audience. Start with the person on the left who creates the source. That person or group is the author or creator. The source is made for a purpose, such as informing or asking people to act, and it is directed toward an audience, the people meant to receive it. Because the author is trying to do a particular job for a particular audience, The source may include some information and leave other information out. The arrows show one communication situation. Author, purpose, and audience shape source content. A source is made by someone, for a reason, and for particular receivers. This does not mean that a source is automatically wrong because it has a purpose. It means we should understand the job the source was meant to do. A notice written to request action may stress the information needed for that request. Knowing the audience also helps explain why language or detail may be chosen in a certain way. Written sources therefore need thoughtful reading rather than automatic trust. Knowing the communication situation helps us read more carefully. Written sources are not automatically accurate. Understanding who created a source and why helps us read it more carefully. Trace the pathway from creator to receiver. What do author, purpose, and audience tell us about a source? The three-part pathway gives the reading frame. The author is the creator, the purpose is why the source was made, and the audience is the intended group receiving it. Together, they can shape what information the source includes. The notice selects details for its job and readers. Next, we will see how preservation, copying, translation, and variation can make versions of a text differ. Follow the same short text from left to right. First, it survives through preservation, then it is copied by hand, and then its message is carried into another language through translation. By the end, the two surviving versions are similar but not identical. Preservation, copying, and translation can therefore produce variation, meaning differences between versions of a text. The final pair shows the result of a transmission path. Texts can vary as they are preserved and transmitted. Copying and translation can also contribute to differences between surviving versions. A text that survives for a long time does not simply freeze in one perfect form. Physical damage may affect what can still be read, copying may introduce small differences, and translation requires choices about how to express meaning in another language. These changes do not automatically make every version useless or false. They tell us that written sources need attention to how they reached us. The transmission path gives another reason for careful reading. Written sources can differ between versions. A surviving text may reflect preservation, copying, and translation, as well as earlier wording. Use the four labels across the transmission path. How can preservation, copying, translation, and variation make texts differ? The pathway shows where differences can enter or survive. Preservation affects what survives, copying can introduce differences, translation can change wording across languages, and the resulting variation means surviving versions may not be identical. The final pair shows that difference clearly. Next, we will compare a written source with oral and visual sources, without assuming the written one is automatically better. Use the same question for all three panels. What happened at the event? The written notice gives formal program information, the oral recollection adds remembered participation and music, and the visual source shows visible features of the setting and crowd. Each source contributes something different. A written source is therefore not automatically more accurate, complete, or useful simply because it is written. Equal panel size helps us compare without ranking first. Different source forms contribute different information. The useful question is what each source adds, not which form looks most official. The written notice was made for a particular purpose, so it focuses on formal event details. The oral recollection preserves what the speaker remembers, while the visual source records what can be seen in the represented scene. None of those forms automatically gives every detail. Comparing them by the same question helps us notice their different contributions without assuming that written words always deserve first place. The comparison works because the criterion stays the same. Source usefulness depends on the question asked. A written, oral, or visual source can each be useful for different details. Compare what each panel contributes to the same question. Why should we not treat a written source as automatically superior to oral or visual sources? The 3 equal panels show the reason. We should not treat a written source as automatically superior because written, oral, and visual sources can contribute different useful information, and none is automatically complete or accurate just because of its form. The shared question helps compare them fairly. Next, we will practice classifying a mixed set of source cards by type. Look at the defining clue in each window rather than the topic of the source. The first is handwritten, the second has writing carved into a durable surface, the third passes information through speech, and the fourth communicates through a painted image. Those clues let us classify the examples as manuscript, inscription, oral tradition, and visual source. Source classification becomes easier when we focus on the form that carries the information. The same source rules work even when the example changes. Classify sources by defining form clues. Handwriting, carved writing, spoken transmission, and image-based communication each point to a different source type. A good classification rule should work on more than one familiar example. That is why the windows use new content, but keep the same defining features. The handwritten page still counts as a manuscript even though it is not the manuscript shown earlier, and the painted procession is still a visual source even though the subject has changed. By separating form from topic, we can classify sources more reliably. The rule should survive a change of example. Source type depends on form, not topic. A new subject does not change the defining source category. Use the 4 visual clues rather than the subject matter. How would you classify the handwritten page, carved stone, spoken retelling, and painted scene? Each defining feature points to one label. The handwritten page is a manuscript, the carved stone is an inscription, the spoken retelling is an oral tradition, and the painted scene is a visual source. The classification follows how each source carries information. Next, we will combine source type, author, audience, purpose, and transmission in one final reading routine. Follow the source through the 5 gates. First, identify its type, then ask who created it, who it was meant for, and what purpose it served. After that, consider how preservation, copying, or translation may have affected the version that survives. This routine brings together the lesson's main ideas and reminds us to read written, oral, and visual sources carefully rather than trusting one form automatically. The 5 gates give us one reusable routine. Careful source reading asks several simple questions. Type, creator, audience, purpose, and transmission all help us understand the source. Each question protects us from a different shortcut. Source type stops us from confusing forms, author and audience show the communication situation, and purpose helps explain why certain information was selected. The transmission check reminds us that preservation, copying, and translation can affect surviving versions. Putting these questions together helps us avoid the mistaken idea that writing is automatically perfect, or that oral and visual sources have less value simply because they are not written. The routine ends with a balanced rule. No source form is automatically superior. Careful reading depends on the source and the question, not on a built-in ranking. Use the 5 gates and the 3-form reminder. What should you check when reading a historical source carefully? The final pathway gives a complete first reading routine. Check the source type, author, audience, purpose, and how preservation, copying, or translation may have affected the surviving version without assuming written, oral, or visual sources are automatically superior. These checks help you read the source thoughtfully. You are ready to classify sources and read them carefully by considering form, creator, audience, purpose, and transmission.